So Will Rogers said, famously, I don't belong to any organized party. I'm a Democrat. I'm sure you've heard that.
Oh, I'm experiencing it.
Yeah, you're experiencing. So, in the recap of the last election, there's a lot of finger pointing, as there always is, and there's a lot of conversation around messaging. And Democrats do not typically get high marks on messaging. Republicans are lockstep. Their message is always clear. I know we don't want to be lockstep. It's part of our strength. But on the other hand, what are we doing on messaging and staying somewhat more focused on the issues that seem to matter most to Americans?
Lee, that's a really important question. I know that there are many of you who have a similar kernel of that question. Let me respond to that two ways. The first thing, a part of what folks I think are asking at the core, when you peel back a couple of layers, talking about message, part of what we're talking about is brand. And we should be clear about this. A brand is not a slogan. Sometimes people get confused and think a brand is a slogan. A brand's not a slogan. Steve Jobs, as complicated as his legacy is, said something that's true. A brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's what a brand is. And I think a part of our challenge in solidifying what our brand is that sometimes, I lean to your point, we're going off in a lot of different directions. But I do think that as we have this conversation, part of what we have to do, to be honest, is to reject, the cottage industry of constantly picking on Democrats. People pick on Democrats so much that we start picking on ourselves. Nobody even has to throw us in the locker, we throw ourselves in the locker. Here's what I mean by that. I reject this notion that all Democrats talk about is quote-unquote social issues. Nonsense. Republicans talk more about these issues than we weren't even thinking about it. We're talking about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and Nancy Mace is attacking somebody at a CVS talking about they're gay married. I mean, and the guy was asking her to have a town hall. So they're bringing up this stuff. We're not bringing up this stuff. And I think, to a degree, while being self-reflective, which I think we are, I think we have to not get bogged down into this sort of constant woe is me-ism that we constantly get involved in, because it's difficult to do the work that we need to do when we're constantly just talking about the work that we need to do. At some point, the conversation needs to end and we need to do the things that we need to do. And so I think we get caught in this sort of circular logic. If we want to fix our brand problem, here's what we do. First of all, we nominate good people as our nominees who reflect their districts and who are speaking about the things that you care about and that your neighbors care about. And we don't tell your nominees what to say sitting in our office in DC, but we allow our nominees to tell us what they are hearing at the doors. You know, Chair Martin repeated this on the call the other day, and it made me think about President Clinton. I was with him right before the election. He was in Western Pennsylvania. And President Clinton is good for, if he's good for anything, he's gonna tell you a story. And he's gonna tell you a story. And he repeated something that Ken repeated, and that now I'm gonna repeat to you. That if you wanna know the message, listen to the people. They will tell you what the message is.
Yes.
The message is crystal clear, that folks don't wanna live in a damn country run by a king. That people understand that government was not working for working people, and Democrats can't just be the defenders of what is. Democrats have to lay out a vision for what we want it to be. And the best way we do that is, as I said again, electing good candidates who you understand are from your district, who are connected to the things that are happening, and we can win. And I'm gonna end because I see another question, but in Lancaster, which I hope you all paid attention to, the state Senate seat that we flipped in Lancaster, good friend of mine, former mayor now, Senator Malone, he flipped a seat that Democrats have not held since 1889. 1889. His margin of victory ended up being just over 400 votes, maybe 460 or something. 600 Republicans mailed in ballots for him. So, people say, Democrats flipped the seat, and we did flip the registration. But we flipped a lot of Republicans who just a couple of weeks ago voted for Donald Trump, and then came in and voted for Jim Malone. And it wasn't because of anything Malcolm did or the DNC did. It was because Jim Malone understood his district. Because he had spent time trying to solve real people's problems. And then he went out and talked about a vision, not for more partisan rancor, but a vision to lower people's costs, make people's lives better.
Thank you. You are an excellent speaker.
You are excellent. I love your shirt. Everybody look at this good
Here's
shirt.
my question. Do you understand how we boycotted the buses and when we were a lot younger, all of us? Why can't we find something like that to do, and a leader tells us we're going after Target? We're gonna, and focus on that company. Because if that company is not helping us, why are we shopping with them?
I agree.
So, but we need a leader to lead that.
So let me say two things. So I think you're absolutely right to pull some of those powerful examples, from our history. But again, I want us to re-examine history a little bit. There were many Malcolms and many Martins and many folks who were involved in this. We often think about Rosa Parks and her refusal to get off the bus as the only time somebody refused to get off the bus. Now that was an important moment. And that was a moment where a group got together, led by folks who organized to get the media attention on this specific case and litigated in such a way that we still remember it now. But we should be very clear that that was a part of a whole litany of people that did the exact same thing. And so we have to do two things at once. As a party, we should just be honest with this reality. That when people ask, who's the leader of the party? First of all, the Democratic Party is led, the National Committee, by my good friend, Chair Ken Martin. But beyond that, in people's minds, the leader of the party is always whoever the nominee is. It just is. It just is. And so what I'm not suggesting is that we wait around for that person to come and go through the primary process. But what I am suggesting is that we have to do two things at once. First, we have to do whatever we can with what we have where we are. And that's what all those folks did. Those many people who sat on buses, who organized and mobilized in their community, outside of Montgomery, all over this country. Just because they did not get the little piece in the history book doesn't make what they did important. Not important, excuse me. I always make this point in this joke that when we talk about the straw that broke the camel's back, we only talk about that last straw. We ignore that for that one straw to have broken the back, there were a lot of people who just had to jump on. And so what I encourage you to do is to just jump on. James Baldwin has a quote that has helped guide my life where he says, "You go the way your blood boils." And what he means by that is you do the thing that you care about. Sometimes when you're like, somebody's not doing this thing, it's because God placed it on your heart to do. And there are a couple of folks who you can organize to help do that. There was a young man who decided that he was going to put together a list of all the law firms who had capitulated to Trump. Now, all of those law firms are reaching out to this guy, who I think is an L2, begging him to change how he designated them on the website because they can't get new people to come and join their firm. Led by the Democratic Party, like in DC, I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we try to replicate what they have. A part of the reason things are easy for Republicans from a messaging perspective or from a event perspective is because they have an easy job. All you have to do is say, what did this guy tell me to do at 1 o'clock in the morning? You read the tweet of the day and you say, now I'm for that. When he says tariffs are off, they say, oh, that's great, tariffs should always be off. If he says they're on, they say, oh, that's great, tariffs are on, that's fantastic. So we have a different job. Like, we care about these things like facts and like the truth. And that's a little bit more complicated than the job that they have. But it's not a job that we want. I don't want to be in a party where one person tells us what we're all doing today, what color we're wearing today. This ain't the Wiz, okay? We're not Oz, okay? I want to be in a place where, as messy as our debates are, that we have them freely in this country and that we have them first and foremost in this party.
I'm David Hammer,
where I live, I celebrated my 80th birthday.
Oh my God, happy birthday!
22 days later, Trump was elected.
Oh, correlation is not causation.
Last month, you know, I said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? What do we do about Trump? My family and I had tickets to fly to Washington, D.C. on July 1st. And we plan to be there for July 4th, to protest against Trump. My first question is the National Committee going to join us?
Yes.
Excellent.
With all of the different marches, you know, the folks who are on our leadership team, I guess it's 10 of us, you know, have been all across the country, you know, partnering in these town halls that you're seeing. One of our other vice chairs was in North Carolina with Maxwell Frost and Chris Murphy, and so, you know, we're trying to divide and conquer, go everywhere. My husband is from California, so, you know, when California comes up, I say, I'll take California.
Brandon, I'd like to have you join me, and anybody else here who wants to join me, we're going to be there 3 o'clock at the National Mall on July 4th. Thank you.
Hang on, this slow. I'm having a birthday this week. Is getting around here. Hang on.
You're steady. You're steady.
Oh, okay.
Well, kind of a different thing. My guess is that about at least 40, 50, 60% of the people that vote every year get their information from very limited information sources. People in this room get their information from all kinds of sources. My understanding is the Republican Party strategists worked out some platforms that they sent their messages on that convinced people that could have gone either way that their truth, which was not true, of course, was what's happening. Is the Democratic Party making any effort to research to see what platforms should we be touching on if we're not now?
That's an incredible question, and yes, we just hired a new director of what Ken is calling our war room, and what the war room effectively is we've taken all of the disparate parts of our sort of comms infrastructure, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but you can handle this, that before in terms of the organizational structure. Our mobilization team, which does anything like digital organizing, engaging on our social media platforms, was separate from the traditional comms team, separate from the sort of what you might know as like a marketing team who engages with the DSD, CCC in terms of what the ads are that go up. Now that team is one team. Led by an incredible gentleman who's now a senior advisor at the DNC, who's leading that operation. Also, as a part of that war room, we created what's called the People's Cabinet to ensure that when these folks go on and lie every single day about critical topics that matter to folks, lie about what's happening at the VA, lie about what's happening at the Department of Education, lie about it's no big deal if the Secretary of Defense is sending war plans to his personal lawyer and brother and whoever else. The only thing, I'm starting to get jealous, I was never invited on any one of these threads. And so we want to have people who are smart and thoughtful, who know what they're talking about, who can go out and sort of respond to sort of a shadow cabinet. And I saw Timothy Snyder's book here, you know, and he talked about the need to do that in his writing. And so we're sort of reflecting that model through this war room model. And he just started, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
You too.
I want to be real clear here on how I'm sounding. I know what I look like. But here you are, coming to testify to us in a room of 95, 99% people that look like me. You have a colleague who is focusing on younger people in the party, and you all know who I'm talking about, David. I do voter registration work, and it's hard. You know, a lot of people that I talk to are people that look like me. How do we bring young brothers and sisters white, black. I listened to George Takei on Katie Fang this morning. What happened to Asian Americans? That's a sin. That's a real sin. How do we become an inclusive, welcoming to all ages? Elders like me and my young brothers and sisters who are the hope of our party and our future. I need some help.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. Thank you for that question. Thank you for understanding that what we need right now is a type of intergenerational cooperation and work that we've not had for a long time. That sort of intergenerational spectrum, and to my mind, we need to be very careful about making sure we're not throwing anybody away. And listen, you are in this room. And one thing I understand is that elections are about addition, not about subtraction, not about exclusion. Not about saying to people that, I'm sorry, you're just past your expiration date, so you have no room in our party. I think that that's the wrong approach. And I have a lot of respect for David, but I want to be clear that on this we have a very big difference of opinion. I do not reject at all the idea that we should have robust primary processes, and I want to be very clear on this. My job as a vice chair of the DNC is not to support incumbents either. So this is not about favoring incumbents. This is not about rejecting challengers. This is about me not being an umpire in the game and then I get to go out and throw a pitch. You can't do both. And so let me just give you another example that's disconnected. I love Emily's List, for example, right? Emily's List has a very specific focus of what they're doing. Emily's List is very clear. They want to elect more women to office. I agree with them. If you look at the numbers, even with the surge that we saw in 2018, we are nowhere close to parity in terms of women being elected to office. Certainly that is true of young people. Absolutely it is true of black folks. You know, when I ran for US Senate, I was the first black gay person to run for US Senate in American history, okay? So I understand. But we should be very clear that what we don't want is a paradigm where if I was running one of those organizations, that I'm running that organization and also running an organization that has to be about all Democrats. There has to be one place where no matter how rough and tumble the primary was, that when it's over, somebody can say, hey, good fight, good debate, now let's come together. It's difficult to do that when you were on the other side of the fight, to then say, now let's come together. And so I think that that's why you're seeing a very stark difference of opinion that we're having right now. And frankly, because again, you can all handle this. I wish this was not a big, public distracting conversation that we were having, to be honest. I think our job as the DNC is to be focused on November and bringing people together. And we cannot be in a position where we are backing incumbents and saying, hey, you're an incumbent, we're gonna back you forever, you can never leave, or be in a position to say, you're a challenger and you're a new member, and this person is old, so you have to leave. Voters you're smart, you know who you wanna vote for. You don't need the vice chair of the DNC to tell you who to vote for. You know exactly who you wanna vote for in a primary. I wanna spend all of the time with you when the primary is over, beating the hell out of Ken Calvert and whoever else is up on the other side, and that's where I'm gonna be spending my time.
I was actually admirative of the Democratic Party's handling of Trump the first 100 days. Give him plenty of room. He has stepped on every rake at Home Depot, at every Home Depot in America. Whack, whack, whack. I mean, he's making a complete fool of himself. But at this point, I think we really need a shadow cabinet to stand up and speak out at every possible event and occasion. We need Buttigieg and Holland and Becerra and all the others who are so competent, who made this country work, and they need to stand up and step up and speak out and be heard on a daily basis, because we really need them.
Can I say something? Yes, you're right, but can I build on that to say, we also need you. I've said this a couple of different ways, but I want to underscore it, because if you don't leave here sort of feeling anything else from this, we should be clear on two things. The Democratic Party is not just the 8 people who were elected in National Harbor. It's you. It's all of us. And a part of what we do when we limit who we see as having the capacity to lead to just the few folks who we see on TV, I think we limit ourselves and we lock out a bunch of leadership that might never get on MSNBC, but could be doing something right here in Palm Desert that's making such a big impact on a local level. We need to celebrate that. And it's not just elected officials. When you think about what's happening right now with misinformation and disinformation, that's why I make the point. There's a great body of research out that like misinformation, disinformation is bad, right? You understand this, it's happening, right? Happening more than ever. So what does that mean? It means that people are not just not trusting what they see on the news, but people are doing everything they can to avoid political news. People avoid political news, okay? People like drive off the road to have to not know what the hell is going on because it's too stressful, and that's a part of their intent, right? So you stick your hands in your ears and you just ignore it. So people might not know what to trust, what platform, but they do know who they trust. And I think a part of what we do when we don't recognize the who we trust part is we give up our power. There are 5 or 6 or 10 people in your phone right now who you avoid talking with politics about because it might be uncomfortable, because they might have posted something on Facebook that made you a little weary, but you're gonna have a better chance of reaching them than any person on MSNBC. And I want you to truly believe that. And you might not have, people feel like, well, I don't have all the right things to say, and they're so eloquent in how they speak, which is why you like them, and they can get big crowds of people to come, and that's necessary. But I believe in this yes and approach. Yeah, we need the big rallies, but more than that, we need those quiet conversations at dinner with the people who you love best in the world, who are comfortable saying to you, I don't really want to be involved in politics, and it doesn't matter how big the rally is, they're not showing up for that. So in this moment, when I talked about the local stuff, when I talked about the state Senate seat, I know that feels like, how does that meet this national moment, Malcolm, to like win the school board race? How does that impact Donald Trump? But the reality is, we got Donald Trump because we forgot this stuff. And so we're not gonna ever substantively beat the MAGA movement, no matter who holds the mantle at the time, unless we fix this stuff. And this stuff is actually easier. And on the local stuff, you get to see the fruits of your labor. When you go and help somebody get on school board, and then they like win, like wow, you directly could sort of decide that. You yourself can't decide the outcome of the national election, right? We're gonna all play our part, play our role, but there are some of this smaller stuff, like making sure our local committees have committee people in every single seat. That's something you can do right where you are, and those things put us in a position that when we have our big presidential primary, and there's gonna be a lot of people, okay? All great, I know all of them, they're fantastic, okay? They need to have an infrastructure that they can build into and plug into immediately. And we need to be a part of doing the work to build it. And that's not done at rallies. That's done in living rooms. That's done at churches. That's done at bingo halls. That's done out there at pickleball, okay? That's where we have to do some of this work as well. And when we recognize, Ken says something all the time that I love, and the chairman will be out here. When you get to know him, I told you Bill Clinton tells stories. I tell stories. Ken tells like Midwestern stories. He loves that. And one of the things he says all the time is that many hands make light work. And that's what we need to do. Just do your little piece of it. You ain't got to do the whole thing. Just do your little piece. And so I would challenge each of you, when you leave here today, to think about somebody in your contact list who's not engaged in politics at all, they just avoid talking about it, or somebody who's maybe gone to a different side, and begin that conversation with them. I would challenge each and every one of you to do that.
And we're going to have one more question here, then we have a couple of other things to say.
I have a strategic question
Yes.
I'd like to ask, especially in light of what you said about the framework that you're putting in place at the federal, at the committee.
With the war room thing?
Yes.
Okay.
My concern is, too often,
when we target an issue like Social Security or Medicare, and then we target an issue like, for younger voters, like affordable rent and being able to get a job where you can afford to have a family. The problem I see is that it's too easy for people to only hear the one message and not realize that what we're standing for is a bigger, broader message that includes both generations, both theories. And I just think it's important strategically, not a motto that everybody says the same thing, but that we get to that level where what we're talking about allows both sides of that equation to feel included and like they're going to be voting for their own interest, even though it's on a broader scale. That's the challenge.
That's absolutely, that's so well said, and I'm going to stick around for other folks who have questions. I'd love to talk with each of you. But let me say this in brief, because I know we have other speakers. You're absolutely right. I think that's so appropriate what you said. But I want to say this too. I talked about us throwing ourselves in the locker. We need to give ourselves a little bit more credit for what we've done. Here's what we've done. We have won or overperformed in every single special election since Donald Trump was elected. Right now, in every poll that I've seen, and every poll that has been released in the past month, the generic congressional ballot for Democrats, the lead that we have, is 2 to 3 points larger than it was in 2018 when we saw the largest flip in the House of Representatives in history. People like forget that, but that was in history. We've never done that before. But hear me on this. Hear me on this. A big part of what we need to continue to do, and you talk about hammering the message, Donald Trump, for the first time since he's been in public life, is underwater on people's belief that he can handle the economy. Donald Trump is underwater right now on his key issue of immigration and the border. And a majority of Americans don't think that you should be ignoring the Supreme Court when they say that you bring Kilgore home. And so I think we have a lot that we can build over. We didn't get to this position in a day. We're not going to get out of it in a day. But as Democrats, we must do this, and I will shut up here. My husband watches this show called Silo on HBO. Maybe you know Silo. I don't watch Silo. I have to listen to Silo if I want to sit on my own damn couch. That's how it works. And so while Silo was on, in the last episode, this woman on the show said something that I think is so prescient in this moment. She said, we have to figure out how to be angry with each other and not at each other. And that's difficult to do. But that is the work of this party. A part of the reason the number's at 27%, not because independent haters or whatever, that's because Democrats are saying we don't like Democrats right now. And a lot of that is driven out of like we lost an election that had very important impacts on all of our lives. And so there's reason to be upset. But there's also reason to hope and reason to work, and I'm happy to do this work with you. So God bless you, and thank you so much.